So now we're going to be talking about stations, and a lot of the things here actually did make it into the game, with a few notable exceptions. One of them being, it says, when it comes to crimes or a bounty that has on a player's head. It's like if the player is currently wanted for crimes against the faction the station is affiliated with, the station will refuse to give them permission to dock. Yes, that can and does happen, although the degrees at which it does is varied from point release to point release and balance to rebalance. The players below a certain threshold may be allowed the player to dock. So basically, I guess if you have like 1,000 credit bounty or below, maybe they'll allow you to dock. I'm not sure how much of that actually made it into the game. The player may have the option to communicate that they are turning themselves in which case they would be given permission to dock, with maybe some caveats. This has never happened. Right now, your only interaction with the NPCs in general, and the station in particular, is the ability to contact the station and say, I want to request docking, or cancel the request for docking. That's about it. There is no other interactions with the NPCs, and this has been a major problem with Elite Dangerous on the whole, and one of the reasons why people call it such a shallow experience, that it doesn't feel like it's a living and breathing universe. As scientifically accurate as it may be, this is again one of those elements that causes players not to be given a sense of agency within the game world itself, and is an example of poor world building in my view. And pretty much everything else here is, well, it says players are given priority over AI ships on the waiting list. There is no list. It's kind of a free-for-all with docking. Probably most players wouldn't allow, even if it was a better space traffic control system, and they want to wait for their turn, unless you wanted to enforce that, at which point people would once again complain that it's taking too much time to dock. And again, players could then pay a premium for docking rights with some stations in order to get priority docking. Well, that of course never made it into the game. The only one that really did was entering a station not given clearance will cause the player to receive a fine. That did work, or that is in the game rather. Player must fly their ships through the aperture into the into the slot station, aka the mail slot. Pretty much that made it in as described. But I want you to read this, because this was actually shown in the 1.1 gameplay trailer about 2.5 years ago. And listen to this description, the trailer that they put out, and then we'll talk about how the end result of this actually ended up being implemented. It says, constructing stations through an event system, or the event system. As we now today, that event system has become known as community goals, but at least. One exciting feature that we hope to implement is the opportunity for players to be able to view such a station, or to view a station in its various stages of construction. Such as in the image above, a precursor to a new station would be the arrival of a large ship that would fulfill the role of temporary station or colony ship to a specific system. We've sort of kind of got that now with megaships, maybe? This would act as the primary hub for trade and missions until work on an adjacent static station was complete. The construction of the station would be managed by the event system, and as such would generate missions and opportunities for the players, allowing you to help or hinder the progress of a station. By helping the station, you could advance its construction, opening up a potentially lucrative new trade route and mission hub. You would be able to firstly see the framework structure, constructed of metals from local asteroids or brought in from afar, and gradually the station would be built up from that point. The station would then become habitable, and trade could start with it long before it was fully complete. Much like a house development, the extra space would gradually be built out as it was needed. Players could also opt to undertake a more insidious tasks that would damage the station's progress for personal profit. If enough players chose this route, there is a chance that it will affect the project so negatively that the construction team would cut their losses and move on to the next project, leaving a half-finished station behind. And this is the 1.1 trailer. Okay, I remember when that trailer dropped, that people were kind of more or less, you know, almost going bonkers over it, because from this description and from that trailer, what it seemed like this would happen is this is also in the unveiling of the community goals. And people thought, well, this would be generated by the background simulation and missions and stuff like that, and we would be able to, and they hinted even at the time, Frontier did, that we'd be able to see the ship or the station under construction over the course of weeks and months, as player activity and doing missions and bringing ore and stuff like that, again, giving a reason for mining and other mission-based objectives to supply the station while it's being built. Instead, what we got was the community goal system that we know today, in which the first one of these stations to be built was based either on a single or a series of community goals, and basically what features would be unlocked on that station was based on what tier you got to. If you only got to tier 3, maybe only repair and stuff like that would be unlocked, but you had to get to tier 8 in order for there to be a shipyard and all features to be unlocked. Never did we really get to see the station, with the exception of they kind of put a station that was in the process of being constructed out in a system. You could go visit this new station before it arrived at its final destination. And to give you an idea, I don't even remember what that station was, but it was one of those things that what they had hyped up between the trailer, between this description of how this was supposed to work, and then for it to just be a 1 or 2 week community goal, and it was one of those things that instead of watching the station grow dynamically as part of an interactive, breathing, living, simulated universe, that it was just, oh, nope, we did this community goal for this week, and boop, next week during the maintenance, here it is, we just put it in there, and it magically appears already completed. Yet, there's still stations like Sothos, it's either Sothos, Socios, or both, that look like they're still in progress of construction, and I spent a few days and or weeks doing those runs about a year ago in order to, well, get up to elite, at least in something, to get to the Founders World and get a cutter and all of that stuff. And I didn't see the progress of those stations continue to build up, despite the amount of activity, of player activity that was going on around them at the time. So it's one of those things that, again, what was kind of envisioned or proposed to players and sold to players and how it ended up being implemented is a shallow shell of what people were expecting. And this is a pattern that has repeated itself time after time after time over the course of the past 2.5 years at this point. Now, something else they talk about here is speed limits that has been implemented into the game. Scan before access. The players must submit themselves to a scan before being granted access to the station. No, you're just randomly scanned. If we did require a scan before access, then I think this would cut down on some of the murder hobo-ness around the community goals, at least for that part. Toll. The player must pay a fee in order to be allowed to access a station. There's no tolls. Again, there's no docking fees. And this is an aspect of the game that I think really takes away from the living, breathing dynamic of it. Although at this point, probably fees and tolls and stuff like that would be almost meaningless. And again, maybe that toll would be ranked based on your rank with the local faction. If you don't have a rank with them or a bad rank, that toll is more than if you're allied with them. They're willing to give you a little bit of a break on discount or discount break on price because you're such a good ally and friend to them. Again, ideas of this were implemented of ways in which it could build a much more vibrant and alive world. And then docking for fuel. There was this idea that there would be exterior points where the players can dock to refuel without actually having to dock in the station itself. This was never implemented, as far as I know. And still not implemented to this day. Again, to talk a little bit more about docking protocols here. The numbers changed. Again, numbers changed to me isn't that big of a deal. It's more that general functionality never made it to the final game, or at least into the game as described as of yet. And again, things here is pretty much, they're talking about the fueling point, which was scratched from the game. I don't know if I really care about that one way or the other, but again, it was another option that currently isn't there, and the certain mechanics for this, in order to work, may be required with certain other ships in the future, Panther Clipper, in order for them to be able to interact with the stations if they can't fit through the middle slot. And some more pretty pictures. And here's one other thing that's kind of interesting. There was the idea that there would be the docking assist interface coming soon. Never made it into the game. I don't ever recall, since the original premium beta until today, I've never seen this pop up on my head-ups display. It would be really nice if it did. I think that a lot of people would certainly make docking a little bit easier, especially in some of the larger ships, like the Type 9 here. You'd be able to see exactly where you were in terms of orientation. But, yeah, this never made it into the game. Yet, coming soon. Trademark, trademark, trademark. Automated docking. That's been in the game. It's worked at various times. It hasn't worked in other times. I still say equipping a docking computer is kind of, buyer beware. I really did become aware of this in about 2 years ago, because back in the betas and stuff, you learned how to dock your ship manually, because using the docking computer was a certain rebuy. You were most certainly going to receive a rebuy, because it would crash you into the station and get you killed. Later on, if you killed the docking module, if you shot out the docking module, it would cause the ship to automatically blow up. Was another fun thing around the 1.1, 1.2 days. They did eventually fix that, and now the docking module does work and play the nice little Danube walls, much like docking in 2001. I have flown with a docking computer from time to time, just for mainly shits and giggles, but recently I haven't done with it. And of course, munitions, repairs, commodity markets, outfitting, shipyard, contacts, pretty much that's what's been there, with a few menus added from time to time. And, well, that's pretty much it. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the shield system and what made it, what didn't. But again, if you take a look at how stations were proposed to be built, it seemed like they were going to be done as part of the background simulation, and that would have been absolutely cool if these events would pop up as part of the BGS. And that's what many people have been asking for a very long time. I have a feeling that this may get addressed at the Frontier Expo on October the 7th for what they're planning on doing beyond 2.4 in order to flesh out careers and expand some of the gameplay. It'll be very interesting to see if that isn't one of the elements on their list, to have the background simulation create mini community goals or events based on certain aspects and things like that, versus having to do everything manually with a community goal event, and then you just add a station at a various spot depending on what the results of the community goal was during a maintenance downtime. And allow again, give players a little bit more sense of agency and say, this is Tango Dock 123. I spent 3 weeks or 4 months or whatever the time frame is mining ore, and that would give miners, hell, if that was part of the thing of mining and fleshing out the mining career so that miners would have a reason to really do it and affect the in-game world by banding together and going out and mining, and maybe some of the best resources are in hazardous resource extraction sites, to where they need a couple of escort fighters to go with them in order to do the mining. Shoot, there's some ideas for meaningful gameplay. Yes, it could still be considered grinding, but it's grinding with impact on the greater game universe itself. That gives players a sense of urgency, a sense of ownership of that game world, and investment into it, which keeps them coming back and playing some more. And that is something that Elite Dangerous to this day lacks, and it needs to be addressed. But that's a topic probably for another time. Until then, I will see you next time.